All right, Mr. Spiegel, or may I call you Dennis?
You please call me Dennis.
All
Yeah.
right. Basically, start from the beginning, from where you tell us more about yourself. If no one, everyone watching is not familiar with your work.
Well, I've been in the theme park and amusement park business all my life. I started when I was 13 years old, and I began as the ticket taker at the admissions gate at Coney Island here in Cincinnati. And my superintendent from my high school ran that operation for Coney Island. Back in those days, uh, school teachers would work, find summer jobs, and since Coney Island was so close to our area, all the school teachers worked there and the superintendent did. So he was a good friend of my family. He needed some help um, during Hot Dog Day and Procter and Gamble Day and Cincinnati Gas and Electric Day to help hand out tickets and get the cars through. So he asked me to come in and work for him, and I started working when I was 13. And I worked there, Andy, through junior high, high school, and college every summer. So I was there for from 1959 60 all the way up till 1969 when I graduated from college.
Well, I think you answered my question. What I was going to ask: did you always have an interest in the amusement park industry?
Well, I didn't in the beginning, but the more I was around it, the more I enjoyed it, the more I liked it. As I said, we're not making hubcaps. It's fun. So I was kind of watching it. And my cashier, who worked with me, Evelyn Lofts, um, she was just a wonderful person. And she would say to me when I was young, "You're going to be an executive in this company someday. You're going to run this company. You're going to be part of it." And I go, I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And then she'd say, "No, you are." And the more of it, the older I got, and as I went through college, university, I started seriously looking at it, and I would come back and I started working in the. I helped with the personnel. I went out and recruited the workers in the greater Ohio and northern Kentucky region. Went to all the universities. Um, then, when I graduated from college,
Mm-hmm.
I went to Moorhead State University down in Kentucky. Um, I The company had just been acquired by Taft Broadcasting, and Taft Broadcasting had just bought recently Hanna Barbera Studios,
Mm-hmm.
and they were looking for a way to exploit the characters like Disney did. So uh, the chairman of the board and the president of the company flew out to California to meet with Roy Disney. Walt Disney had passed away 3 years earlier, and he said, "We bought Hanna Barbera Studios, and we would like to know how you approached getting into the theme park business." And Roy Disney said, "Strange you would come to us when we wanted to get into the amusement park business back in the 50s. We came to Cincinnati and met with Coney Island, the Walks and the Schott family, and they helped us. You should go back and talk to them."
Hmm.
Well, Gary Walks, who was the idea and the fellow who really promoted the new park concept, had just had a meeting not too long before that with Taft Broadcasting. So they got back together, and within 6 months there was a merge, or really it was Taft bought Coney Island, and I was graduating from college. The Coney Island people knew me because I'd been there for 10 years. They they were going to need good young people like you all, like you and John, and so they hired me, and we came in, and the rest is history. And here we are today.
Speaking from, we're going. backtracking a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell us about your experiences at Old Coney Island in Cincinnati.
Well, it was a wonderful place. It was called America's Finest Amusement Park. And as we said, when Walt Disney was planning Disneyland, he became friends with the Walks and the Schott family. And he came to Coney Island many times to get ideas. And uh, he would do this at a few parks around the country. He'd go in, just sit on the benches and watch people get ideas, see what they were doing, what they were thinking, what they were enjoying, how the families were getting on the rides and attractions, and just learning. And so it was a beautiful park. You have some aerial views of it. If you don't, I'll send you some.
Okay.
And for me, when I started, I was assistant general manager,
Mm-hmm.
and we were a small company. There were only 16 really full-time management people, and we cut the baby in half. Half of us stayed at Coney Island and operated it during the last 2 years of its operation, and the other half went up and started planning and building Kings Island because we couldn't go back and forth and do both properly. So I was part of that Coney Island team. Now, that's really where I cut my teeth on management and understanding business because we were running a big company now at that time. Um, and so it was always fun to be in the park. And of course, I was in my early 20s, and I would always get out and talk to the people and see what's going on. And I love to go down to the rides and kind of watch the people from behind the scenes. And at nighttime, on a beautiful night, I would walk up the catwalk of the Shooting Star. I would stand up at the top, and it was a dog-leg left coaster, so it would come up the incline, make a turn, and then drop down. And I'd stand right here at the turn, and the last thing you expected to see if you were on a roller coaster was somebody standing there, and I'd say, "Have a good time," and scare them to death. And they loved that. People would be scared or kind of scream. And then I'd also go down to our haunted house, and the haunted house had it was kind of a switchback track layout and had different rooms. And of course, we had secret passages that went from one room to the other for maintenance and everything. So I'd go in there, and I would come out and boo and scream scream at somebody and holler at them, have a little bit of fun, watch them. And then the other ride that was always a lot of fun was the Lost River, and that was kind of the forerunner to log flume. You had a boat in the water trough and
Kind of similar to the what's now the runner race for your life, Charlie Brown at Kings Island.
yeah, kind of like that. And we it, back then they called it another name for them was Tunnel of Love because the boys and the girls go in there and make out while they were in the ride before they came down the hill. And I'd go back in there and stand, and it was dark, and they couldn't see, and do the same thing, go out, boo, and scare them when they were coming through, and just get some laughs and have some fun. So Coney Island was a wonderful place. We had a wonderful music venue called Moonlight Gardens, and back in the 40s and 50s, and I wasn't there then, but you had the big bands. You had the Dorseys and Perry Como and Frank Sinatra and all these great bands and singers. That's how people enjoyed themselves. Television wasn't big yet, and they'd go out and dance, and that venue during the summer was full 5 nights a week. People came and just danced. We'd get thousands of people there. So you had Moonlight Gardens, you had the rides. We had a wonderful restaurant up over the mall, and we called it the top of the mall, and had a wonderful chef, Tony Mancini, and Tony was a fabulous chef cook, and he could cook with the best chefs in the United States, and so people would come there, dress up, suits and ties, and they'd have their fabulous meal, Dover sole and frog legs and filet mignons and Chateaubriand and everything.
Sounds like Coney back in the day was a real fancy place to be.
Well, it was. It was fun. It could be either fancy or it could be casual. So, so it was a for me it was a fun place, and uh, I cook a lot, and that's kind of a hobby of mine. And I learned from that chef Tony Mancini when I was like 16, 17 years old. On my breaks, I'd go up to that restaurant and I'd watch him cook, and he'd teach me how to do things. And then in the winter, when I'm still in high school, he stayed here for a month or two after the park closed to get it put away for the next year. And he'd say, "Hey, you want to go downtown to have dinner with me tonight?" So I'd go with him. We go to the Maisonette and Pigalle and the Gourmet Room. We had three five-star restaurants here in Cincinnati, one more than actually New York had.
Hmm.
And so I'm being introduced to all these wonderful foods and wonderful chefs and maitre d's, and at a very young age, and I'm thinking it's pretty good. I like this. This is kind of fun. So that was kind of my early days at Coney. But we worked hard and worked long. We back then amusement parks were usually closed one day a week. At Coney Island, we were closed on Mondays, so
Hmm.
we ran Tuesday through Sunday.
Before we get to the next set of questions, can you tell us the experience, because your generation got to experience two coasters that sadly are no longer with us. That'd be the Shooting Star at Coney and the Wildcat at Coney Island in Cincinnati.
Yeah, and those were two great coasters. As I said, the wild or the Shooting Star was a dog leg left out and back, and just a great coaster. And it had been like a lot of wooden coasters back then. It had evolved through time, been added to and changed. And then the Wildcat was down at the end of the Coney Island Mall, and that was a figure eight basically uh, roller coaster. That was the first roller coaster I ever rode,
Hmm.
and I rode it with my niece, my cousin actually, in about 1957, and I was scared to death, and I kind of fell down on the floor and was under the lap bar the whole
Hmm.
ride. and but when I came back in, I wanted to ride again, and I haven't stopped riding it since.
Now they closed it before the Coney itself closed in '71, correct?
Yeah, what Coney Island did, and I wasn't with the company at that point in time yet, but in 1964, they extended the mall and put in the Sky Ride,
Right.
and put in a Von Roll Sky Ride from Switzerland, and that was a very popular ride at that point in time with amusement parks, and they'd done one at the World's Fair in New York, so everybody loved Sky Rides. So we extended the mall, and when they did that, had to tear down the Wildcat. And the other thing, now think about this: in the age that we live and work and play, and how crazy the world is today in 2024. Right next to the star, we had a shooting gallery with live 22 ammunition, and we gave everybody guns, and they shot the targets that were around. One day somebody turned around and shoot somebody. You couldn't do that, but actually live and ammunition that if you were 10 years old, you could take the gun and shoot it. It had a little chain on it about that long, so you couldn't. All you have to do is go like that.
Hmm.
But, that's how things have changed.
Uh, well, next set of questions is about when the closing of Coney and your experiences with Tap Broadcasting in Kings Island. Can you? I know must have, since you were there when it worked there when it closed. I could guess that it was very emotional for you that when they announced Coney was closing down in '71.
Well, it was a mixture of emotions, really good and bad. I mean, we Coney Island had been there for 70 some years at that point in time, I guess, and was a fixture to Cincinnati. Remember, Coney Island developed from Parker's Grove, right on the Ohio River, and how it began was it was the weekend getaway for people who lived down in Cincinnati, and we didn't have back then it was horses and buggies and things, but they would get on the riverboat, the Island Queen, and they would dance and party and eat and come up to Coney Island, spend the day, and then they go back at night. So that was their recreation. That was their computer then, instead of sitting and playing on YouTube or something all day. They did it on a boat. So people would they really enjoyed that. They loved it. People dressed up back then. They put sport coats on. They had their straw hats back in the the early days, and they really there was decorum, unlike today. And so, but that went away like everything does. It changes. That that's just change. That's what happens. But back then, in those early days, as we got closer to the closing down of Coney Island, uh, that was sad. But the new part and the happy part was we knew we were going to open Kings Island. So I think it's kind of interesting for you and your viewers to know Coney Island in land size was 155 acres, exactly the same size as Disneyland, California, when Walt Disney opened that. Okay, the last year of operation in 1971, I'm going to give you some comparisons. We did right at 1,000,001 in attendance. A lot of people for a park. That was very good back then. We probably did in revenue about $6 million total for the summer. Not much today, but back then, pretty good number. We had about 350, 400 employees, seasonals, students, and people, school teachers, like I
Mm-hmm.
said. Um, when we closed, and I want to come back to that in a minute, because it was a great last day story. But when we opened Kings Island, we had 1,500 acres. We had 5,000 employees. We did 2,000,000, 12,000 people at the end of that first year. And uh, did I say we had 5,000 employees, and we did 35 million in revenue. So if you tried to graph where we came from to where we were, the lines just were
Yeah.
straight up. It was so amazing. Uh, but the last day, you asked about the sad part. This was kind of a mixed emotion too. The Delta Queen, which still is on the river, uh, called me. I was OD, Officer of the Day, that day, and I answered the phone. And he said, "This is the captain of the Delta Queen." Or I don't remember his name now. And he said, "Would you mind if we came and docked down at the riverside where they always did back when for 60 years and allowed the people to come in?" I said, "Absolutely, come on down." And he said, "We have a gentleman by the name of Homer Denny with us. He's 92 years old. He was the original Calliope on the Island Queen." Now, the Island Queen blew up in Pittsburgh in 1947. It went up there for its routine maintenance in winter, and a welder was underneath the steps welding, and by mistake hit the oil tank with his welding gun and blew up the ship, and it totally burned up. You can find these pictures, Andy, online. Very interesting. So I said, "No, you come on in. It's great." So they did. They came in around 2 o'clock. Well, around 6 o'clock, they went down. They started boarding and leaving. And I don't know. Delta Queen's a beautiful boat, um, and a lot of history and memories there. So as they were leaving, the boat backed out into the river, the big river boat with its big stern wheel, and Homer Denny got on the Calliope and he played "Goodbye My Coney Island Baby," which was a very famous song back in the 20s. And "Goodbye My Coney Island Baby, so long, my long time, blah, blah, blah." And we were standing on the side there of the river watching them waving. We're all crying like babies. Ed McHale, Gary walks, Ralph walks, myself. We're all like, because we knew that was it. That was the end of it. And I have the distinction of we always to close the park at night at Coney to let the ticket booths know the park was closed. We didn't have cell phones and walkie talkies like that then. We had a siren that we blew, and it was in the admin building, and we'd go back in, and 10 o'clock, flip the switch, and you'd hear the siren blow through the park, and that kind of let everybody know it was shut down. And the ticket booths automatically then turned out their lights and didn't sell any more strip tickets back then, okay? And so at 10 o'clock, I was the guy who closed Coney Island and sent the signal to everybody that it's over that night. So that was kind of something that sticks with me.
But well, 6 months later, Kings Island opens in April of 1972. Can you tell us about what the because I know it was a big deal back then, especially. But can you tell us about the ceremonies that happened during opening day?
Yeah, well, we had planned it, and we worked our behinds off during that winter. We've been working on it now a year and a half, 2 years, and I've learned one thing: no matter how long you plan to open a theme park, you can always use another month. And if you planned it to open that month, you can use another month. So you have to pull the trigger and say, "That's it, we're opening. Let's do it." So we did open, and um, we had a huge parade. We brought in officials from New York. We had one of the columnists from the New York Times come in. We had Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera came in from Hanna Barbera. We had Miss Ohio, Miss Junior Miss Ohio, Miss America. Um, we had a jet flyover. We had I think it was we released something around 5,000 balloons. We had marching bands. Um, we had the characters: Scooby Doo, Fred Flintstone, Yogi Bear. Um, in the parades, we had all of our hosts and hostesses in their outfits. My wife actually was the head of guest relations. We
Hmm.
weren't married yet, but she was the head of guest relations, and they were all in their pretty outfits with their hats and their props that we had copied from Disneyland. So it was it was kind of fun. So interestingly enough, Andy, the when we started out with our daily attendance at opening at KI, we weren't doing any more than we were at Coney Island when we closed. We were doing maybe during the weekdays 2,000, 25, 3,000. Weekends maybe five. And that's about what we were doing, John, when we were at Coney Island. Okay, so it was kind of, we're worried. And that went on until July 4th. Now, we'd been open a couple of months, weekends, now we were in daily operation. And the word of mouth was really starting to spread. And it was television and news, but the word of mouth, everybody started talking about, you have to see this park. It's unbelievable. Remember, these are the early days. There weren't that many theme parks at that time. At that point, there were only three Six Flags parks: Disneyland, Disney World, and a few more had just opened around the country. So,
I mean, Carowinds didn't open until a year later.
73, I think Carowinds was when we bought that. And KD was 75, really. So then you had Great America 76, and Worlds of Fun might have been 70. They might have been 72 or 3 right in there with us. So the word of mouth spread, and it was really taken off down. So at Coney Island, July 4th was always a huge day. just because of the patriotism, and it was the place to be to see Rossi fireworks shows. Well, we had that day 40,000 people.
Hmm.
So we went from 5,000 to 40,000. Okay, from July 4th through the end of the season, we averaged every day attendance somewhere between 35 and 40,000 people. So we had this enormous flow. It was like somebody turned on the big spigot and the water just flooded in. Only it was people. And it was amazing. I mean, we were at capacity daily in the park. And I've told the story a few times where we'd always, our friends at Six Flags, Errol McCoy and Larry Cochran and Bill Crandall and Bruce Jewell and some of these people, we'd always talk back and forth, and they were wondering how we were going to do because nobody really built a park like them. Okay, so we did. They asked us in the early winter what we were going to do in attendance, and a guy by the name of Jim Thompson had done our feasibility study, and he told us we were going to do 2 million people, which only Disneyland and Disney World had never cracked that opening. When we closed that last night of Kings Island's first season, we did 2,012,000 people.
So you beat Disneyland and Disney World's attendance.
We were in the 2 million club, if you will, okay? So there were only 3 of us that had really ever done that. So we got back on the speakerphone with the Six Flags guys, and they said, "How'd you guys do? How was your season up there? What'd you do?" We said, and they kind of laughed at us before, and we said we did 2,012,000 in attendance through silence. And they were like, "Oh my gosh!" So, but they were good friends. They helped us a lot, gave us a lot of good ideas and guidance in the early years. But that first year at Kings Island was amazing, and the interesting part of the Kings Island plan was we designed it in house. Prior to that, Randall Duell out of California, we'd done work at the New York World's Fair and was in movies and did things in that area. His company had designed most of the parks, but under Gary Walks, we formed our own design, and we had our own teams who did the planning and design. We brought in outside people, but we managed the process, and I think it's a testimony. 53 years later, or 2 years later, Kings Island's still there, doing 3 million a year. So it worked.
Well, I'm pretty sure some of our viewers actually have heard this story before from you, especially if since you're were one of the guests at Coaster Stock in 2019 when the Beast was celebrating its 40th anniversary. Can you tell us more about the infamous first test run that you experienced on it?
Yeah, well, that was a great night. Um, we I at that time now I was at King's Dominion. They had moved me down to Virginia, and I took King's Dominion through its construction and the first 5 years of its operation as vice president general manager. And King's Dominion and Carowinds were owned by a company. It was a joint venture called Family Leisure Centers, and it was Kroger, the big food grocer, and Tap Broadcasting. So that formed Family Leisure Centers. And we'd have a board meeting once a month. And back then, the industry was still fledgling. We were still learning and figuring out how to operate and make money and handle and do and expand. And so we were in for a board of directors meeting at Kings Island, and the Beast was in process. And Bill Price was general manager then of Kings Island, and we had a suite upstairs in the park where we entertained guests and dignitaries when they came in. And believe it or not, we had a bar, and so we had a kind of rough board meeting that day. So management, Gary Watts, myself, Bill Price, Tom Kempton, Mike Bartlett, a few other guys, we were up there having drinks, and it was early April, cool night, light rain. Conditions were at their optimum for a coaster to get the most speed. And we said, let's go down and ride the beast. So we went down. Charlie Den and his group were down there. They'd been sandbagging and testing now for a week or two, and it was safe. We knew the ride was safe, but nobody really ridden it. And we said, take those sandbags out. We want to go for a ride. So we uh, we were half schnockered, as I like to say, and we all got in the car and the train, and we went up that first incline and down, hit the whoop-de-doos, and we were around, and we're all woo-hoo, hollering, screaming. We went up that second incline, made that turn, and started down into that tunnel, and we hit that tunnel, and what is it, 560 or 40 degrees.
Somewhere in there, about 540 degrees, I believe.
Right, I think it's 540. And we went through that tunnel, and we all thought we were dead. I mean, it instantly sobered us all up, and our eyes were this big. We came back out, finished the ride, did the thing, came back in the station, and we said, "What the hell did we create? This thing is too fast, too much. It's just too." And Bill Price called a meeting with the designer team, Charlie did in the group internally and everything, and literally slowed it down, and it delayed the ride opening 2 weeks because you have anti-rollback dogs, we call them. It had something kind of similar to that. We had to put fins on the front going down the hill to slow it down, and I always said that was the fastest run and probably the second run, first and last at that speed. So that was exciting. That was good. I have to say, I've ridden coasters all over the world. As we know, Kings Island was the renaissance of the wooden roller coaster in the world, in the industry. And the Beast is still my favorite.
I would have to say so myself. And I believe, like you just said, I believe you and a small group of people that you mentioned were one of the first night riders on the Beast.
Yeah, we were. I don't think anybody had ridden it at night before that. I mean, we were the first group, and it just it was amazing when I'm sitting here thinking and remember going through that tunnel, and I'm thinking it scared the hell out of us, really. So.
And this was before I believe trim brakes were invented by then, but after that, I would say Kings Island management did install trim brakes on before the helix.
Yes, yeah, and slowed it down, and it was just too fast. I mean, and what an amazing roller coaster! First time a roller coaster had been built to the actual terrain, rather than just doing bits stuck up in the air 100 feet or whatever.
Well, then again, if you look at a lot of coasters at Kings Island now, there's a lot of them following the Beast's footsteps with them following terrain to some extent.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Mystic Timbers, for example, it follows the terrain and goes over.
That was the first one. The Beast was the first one. Because the reason it was like that was we were, for Park Proper, we called it, okay, we were running out of land. We had Lion Country over in that area, had 250 acres devoted to that. We had the Coney Mall, we had Oktoberfest, we had International Street, Hanna-Barbera Land, and Rivertown. And there wasn't really anywhere else to go on the periphery. So the team, the Kings Island design team, came up with that concept and said, well, let's build a roller coaster on this backside where it goes down to the river and through the woods. And wow, what a great idea that was. You probably know this. Do you remember what the Beast cost to build?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was usually but at that time I believe it was more than the regular coaster cost would be then.
Yeah, I think I may not be right. Your readers, your viewers will send me emails and everything. Tell me, but it was somewhere between $4 and $7 million. Well, if you went to build the Beast today, it'd be $70 million.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
Um, well, since you said it early in our beast in the part with the beast in 19, I believe you went down in 74. Tell us about King's Dominion a little bit.
well, King's Dominion was our second park, and just like Six Flags, had built Texas, and then they went to Georgia. They built Texas in '61, Georgia '67, and St. Louis in '71. Six Flags, as Six Flags Company, not the new merge today,
Mm-hmm.
they only built three parks, and the rest of them were
Acquired.
acquired. Yes, exactly. So we were we were planning King's Dominion, and we did the same thing. Part of us stayed at Kings Island, part of us went down to Virginia. And I stayed at Kings Island the first 2 years, 72 and 73, and was director of operations, assistant general manager. And then in 73, um, I went down to Virginia. I was 3 days in Richmond, 3 days in Cincinnati, 1 day on an airplane, basically. So going back and forth. And that's the way we worked. And then eventually, Gary Walks had gone down to get that project started. He had moved down with his family, and he called me and he said, I want you to come down there, bringing me back to corporate, him, to be the head of the amusement park group. So I went down. I moved down to Richmond, and I didn't want to go. I never moved really, and I I went down and looked at the market, the city, and everything. I said, I just don't want to be here. I prefer not to. But they said, "No, we need you. We want you to come down." So I did, and I took it through uh, the. It had started probably 20% of its construction, 25% had started. Charlie Flatt was our project engineer at that point in time. Jim Figley, Roy Rector. These were all originally Coney Island guys
Mm.
who moved down and had done Kings Island. And so I was working with them, and I was the general manager and responsible for the budget and reporting to the board of directors. And the buck stopped here at that point in time. And so we we took it through. We went through into construction, and I'll never forget that as we were building International Street, we ran into in those early '70s. There was a recession,
Right.
and half of International Street was done. The other half was under construction, just really getting started. That's where we built them, and that the other side that got hit with the recession cost almost double what this side did. So we had to make adjustments to our budget. Didn't sacrifice the quality, uh, but we got it going. And actually, uh, for our planned date, we did something down there different. Nobody else had done.
Mm-hmm.
We opened Lion Country Safari in Richmond, and we set that up as a preview center to get people in to preview King's Dominion.
Kind of like what Walt Disney Company did with when they were building Walt Disney World down there. They had a preview center building right across the road where the park was going to be.
Yeah, but the difference was there wasn't anything to do there. You just went and saw it and learned about it. Ours, we had uh, we had this drive-through of Lion Country Safari. So in 1974, when we opened Lion Country, we also did a film. Uh, I think it was called "To Build a Happy Place," maybe, and it talked about building King's Dominion. That summer, With the drive-through, we had restaurant, theater, retail, bird shows, and things. It was the Lion Country Safari area, 1/5 of the park. We did over 600,000 people.
Hmm.
I mean, it was fabulous that year. So in 1975, then when we opened King's Dominion, uh, and I think that was May 10th, 1975, Saturday, May 10th. Uh, what a day. We were located right on I-95, Route 1, which paralleled, that was the prelude to I-95, north-south, and Route 301. There were 3 roads that ran north and south. The morning we opened King's Dominion, at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, we had people lined up outside the park, miles. And by 9 o'clock that morning, we had traffic backed up and stopped 10 miles each way, I-95, Route 1, and Route 301. At 9 o'clock in the morning, I already had over 40,000 people in the park. Our opening ceremony wasn't until 10 a.m.
Hmm.
There were so many people there at 9 a.m. There was going to be a riot. They were shaking the gates and screaming and hollering. They wanted to get in. All had all this traffic around the park. And I said to our marketing director, Tom Kempton, and Ron Trepanier, his assistant, we got to let these people in now. I'm going to open the gates. We went out with bullhorns and we said, please come back another day. The park's so crowded. So we let them in free. They didn't leave. They all came in. And we had about 52,000 people in the park at 10 a.m. And I actually closed the park, Andy,
Mm-hmm.
before I opened it. There was no official opening.
Oh, Lord.
Because it was so
Madhouse.
crazy. Yeah, it was a madhouse. And so I don't think anybody else has ever done that in the industry.
Well, I don't know if I don't, as far as the research I've done, did it exceed the maximum capacity of the park that day, or was it not that bad?
It exceeded the capacity of that park by about 2 times.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it was horrible. And the funny part was, if there's fun, I can say it's funny now. I couldn't say it was funny for 5 years, but I would run into Andy Stein a year later, and he would say, "Hey, Mr. Speigel, I was at opening day at King's Dominion, and it was so crowded I couldn't move, and I haven't been back since because I don't want to get in those crowds." Well, the crowds fell off dramatically after that. So I'd say, you don't have that problem today. Come on back. There's plenty of room. But for 5 years, that was in people's minds that every day you went there, it was
Would be that bad.
You'd have 50,000 people. That wasn't the case.
So 2 years later, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows about that. Any coaster enthusiast knows of this film. 2 years later, Universal Pictures comes and films for a movie by the name of Rollercoaster, starring the late George Segal.
Mm-hmm.
I know they filmed not all of it, but a majority of it was filmed at King's Dominion in the 1976, I believe.
Correct.
Can you tell us the experience of what happened when Hollywood came to King's Dominion's door?
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you how it happened. They sent me a script. They called me from Universal Studios. I was head of the park. And they said, we're going to film this movie, and we'd like to film part of it at King's Dominion. We're going to use Magic Mountain in California, and we're going to use the park down in
Ocean View.
Ocean View in Newport News or whatever that was down there, Virginia Beach. And I said, okay. And I said, what's it about? And they said, well, there's going to be this guy who goes through the parks and he blows up roller coasters and extorts money from the owners of the parks. And I said, that's not a real good theme. We don't like that. I don't think that's going to fly very well with our industry. And I'm abbreviating now. They said, well, basically, well, look, we're going to do this whether you participate or not. They had done uh, Poseidon Adventure, Earthquake, Towering Inferno, and
So the disaster.
want me to pick it up from where we were? Okay, so I flew out to California, met with Lou Wasserman and Sid Sheinberg and a few other people, looked at the script, and when I read the script, what I really didn't like was we'd been working for years to bring in high school and college students to improve the image of amusement parks and theme parks, fun, happy, clean, wholesome places. And they had transient bums that were drunk running the rides and attractions. And I said, no, 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 no. That isn't our industry. That's not even correct. And I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. If you let me work with you on the script and make some additions and changes and edits, we'll talk about doing the film at the park. So they did. They gave me the script. I still have my original script, and I went in, edited, made some changes with them, and negotiated a $250,000 fee for them to shoot at King's Dominion, as I recall. Not for me, for the park. And they came in. Richard Widmark, one of the biggest actors in Hollywood. George Siegel, Academy Award winner with Elizabeth Taylor. Henry Fonda. Helen Hunt was her first movie.
Yeah, she played George Siegel's character's daughter.
She was the daughter. So we had all these great stars. Harry Gardino, Timothy Bottoms, he was the extortionist, very big actor at that time. It was one of the most expensive movies ever produced, and the first Sense-Around movie that Hollywood had produced, where the theater shook when the roller coasters came on. And I think it was, if I remember right, I think it was like $17 million to make that movie, and that was huge at the time. And I've had this in my mind. I wanted to tell this to you today as part of the story. And there was an executive producer on the film, and he's the executive producer, watches over the budget, makes sure everything's on time and on budget and moving through. He was a very nice guy. And I spent a lot of time with him talking about, what was going on in the movie while they were there. They were there at King's Dominion 6 weeks. And the executive producer, he left after that, and he went on to another movie. Didn't do so well. It was called Star Wars. He became, Howard Kasanjian was his name. You can look that up. He became a producer on Star Wars, so he went from Rollercoaster to Star Wars with Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, and that was a pretty good gig for him. He did well. But so we did. They came in. They spent 6 weeks. George Siegel and I became very good friends. He'd come up to my office and sit at night, and we'd have a drink, and he'd play his banjo. And I tell the story that a year later, after they left, it takes a while after a movie's in the can to have it produced and get it ready. And I had to go out to Hanna-Barbera Studios, and I was out at Beverly Hills Hotel, and I just checked in. I walked downstairs to the drugstore in the hotel to get something, and standing at the counter was George Siegel. Now, I haven't seen George in a year, and I walk up and I kind of turn sideways, and I bump into him. He's paying, and he goes, "Excuse me," and I go, and I bump him again. He goes, "Excuse me," and he goes, "Denny, what the hell are you doing here?" And I said, "Hey, if I'm going to debut in a film," which I played the general manager at the park, I said, "with you, I want to make sure I don't end up on the cutting room floor." So I came out to make sure I was teasing him. We went upstairs and had a drink and kind of reminisced. So that was kind of fun. But the movie was.
Yeah, I'm guessing Star Wars beat it box up. You beat it. At
I
the
would
box
say
office.
Star Wars outdrew Roller Coaster, but it was at that time it was a good movie. It was fun, and they actually had the premiere in Richmond, Virginia, and the theater down there, one of the old theaters. So it was good.
Well, one more thing about it is some people don't really know is the formation of the organization known as ACE actually came about because of the film Rollercoaster.
Yeah, I got a call from a few guys, Richard Munch, and they said, "Excuse me, guys." They said we're forming this club, American Coaster Enthusiasts, and you're doing that film. We'd love to come in. Can we be there? And I said, "Sure, we'll host you and we'll set it in." So that was 1976, and as you know, they just had their last big event at Kings Island here in 2024. So, and they have, I don't know how many members now, but it's from all over the world.
Well, we're members of it as well. So.
I knew you and John were, and I know that there were over 700 people at Kings Island this year.
Oh Lord,
came in, so it was a huge event.
Well, the story goes as that the ACE came, like you said, it came about because of the movie, but they actually had a marathon, like they lapped Rebel Yell,
right,
as it was known back then, which is now Racer 75. They actually lapped it during the part where George Siegel's on the coaster when they were doing takes of it.
Yeah, just kept filming it. Yeah, I think Richard was on that coaster too, and we let him do it. It was fun, and it was the birth of ACE, and I was happy to be a part of that and tell him, yeah, come on in and have some fun, do your multiple rides that you do.
I don't know if you remember, but you remember how many takes it took for them to get the right shots for that scene?
Well, I don't remember how many takes, but I remember this. They brought in the preeminent helicopter pilot from Hollywood, and I went down to watch the filming, and as you know, roller coasters do this, and this helicopter pilot was about 25, 30 feet above the track, following those dips of the roller coaster as the train was going down the track. I had sweat dripping off my palms thinking that he's going to fly into the coaster or so. And of course, one of the great shots in the movie Roller Coaster, when you think it's going to blow up, George Siegel's on it and got the stuff, when it goes to the back curve and it goes around, the helicopter goes on, but the train comes back in. He didn't blow up the coaster at that point in time.
Yeah, he was messing with George to see if he was following direction.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and that was part of the scene and everything. But it was amazing piloting of that helicopter. I'd certainly never seen anything like that. I don't think anybody else that was in the park at that point in time had either.
Now, well, you were at Kings Island during the when the Brady Bunch and Partridge Family were there in the 70s, I believe. Did they have a similar camera rig like they did when they filmed when Taft came in to film the Brady Bunch?
Yeah, I don't think it was quite that elaborate, but it was. They did have all the the harnesses and everything when they came in and they found. I know one of the stories I tell is we, owned by Taft Broadcasting, our newsman here in Cincinnati, our anchor on Channel 12, he called and he says, would you care if my son came out and watched the filming? He loves them, and he'd love to see it being done. He loves filming, and he'd like to be in the business. And we said, sure, come on, bring him out. He came out and ran around, was getting in everything during the filming and everything. And He didn't do too bad. It was George Clooney. His dad, Nick Clooney, was the anchor man.
I knew his aunt was from around here, Rosemary Clooney, but I didn't know that George was around this area as well.
Yeah, they lived right up in the river here, and maybe 30 miles. And Nick Clooney, his dad, was the news anchor man for Channel 12 tech broadcasting for decades. Yeah, so yeah, George was I think he was about 10 when that movie was made.
So I'm not positive if you were still with Dominion when this happened, but I've heard somewhere around a little birdie told. I heard from a little birdie that you somehow actually bought the Wonkamobile from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Is that correct?
Yeah, but actually that was for Kings Island. And I flew up to New York. There was an auction house. They had the lunar. They had a simulation of the lunar module that landed. They had the Willy Wonkamobile and one other thing, and we wanted the Willy Wonkamobile for Kings Island for the parade. And if you watch the original Willy Wonka with Gene Wilder, you see him come in with this thing, big
with the bubbles flirting everywhere,
everything like this, and he's on it. So I bought it. I don't remember what I paid for it, but I'm going to say it was like $1,500 or something, or $2,500. wasn't much. And we put it in a couple of parades. Well, we learned very quickly that movie set pieces and theme park pieces aren't built the same. The thing fell apart in about 5 weeks.
Oh, Lord.
So wheels were falling off and stuff was falling off of it. It was made for a movie, just to shoot in the set. So, but yeah, I bought the Willy Wonka, the original, real Willy Wonka mobile for the Kings Island parade. That was back then.
I mean, at least I got to see a few parades before it started falling apart.
Yeah, we did. And then we just put it in the junk. Wish we still had it. Probably sell that daggone thing for who knows what it'd be worth now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But, so after King's Dominion, I could be wrong on this, did you have any involvement with the creation of Canada's Wonderland or Australia's Wonderland? Or were you not with TAP Broadcasting at that point?
No, I did with both. Taft actually, Kings Island, or Coney Island, Kings Dominion. Well, Kings Island and Kings Dominion about killed me, even at the young age in the early 20s. We worked our butts off, and we worked 7 days a week, and we worked 18 hours a day. And I was asked to go up to Canada's Wonderland and kind of get that one going too, along with Mike Bartlett and a couple other people. And I said, guys, I'm tired. I mean, here I am, 20-something, saying I'm tired. But I was tired. I said, I'll do the next one after that, because we were thinking about some more projects. We had planned one in Chicago, which didn't happen. And that's why Canada's Wonderland was built. But in terms of design and input and concept, we used International Street.
But instead of an Eiffel Tower, you got Wonder Mountain.
We did the mountain, yeah, exactly. And that was a cooling tower, and now it's going to be a roller coaster, I've been told. They're doing
another one.
Yeah, coming out of it and everything. So I was involved there, and then Carowinds, did you say?
Australia's Wonderland.
Oh, Australia's Wonderland. So I worked with Dudley Taft. I had left King's Dominion. I had come back to corporate now, and I was working as vice president of operations, and they weren't using me properly, and I was getting bored. But we were planning this project down in Sydney, and it was exciting. And so I flew back and forth to Sydney for 2 years, about every 2 weeks.
Right.
Back and forth. So I helped with the design and helped Dudley and George Castrucci with the financing and putting the partnerships together down there. With Bill Hanna from Hanna-Barbera and the Hanna-Barbera, there was a guy named Neil Balnaves, who was a resident Australian. I think he's now one of the richest men in Australia, one of the top 5. Worked with them, so I worked down there for those couple of times. Then King's Entertainment changed. It was changing, and Nelson Schwab came in and took over, and that's when I was getting ready to leave. And Dudley Taft came to me and said, I said, I'm going to be leaving. He said, well, will you go down and finish Australia's Wonderland and kind of tie up the loose knots and everything? And I said, absolutely. I mean, sure. And I did. I went down and worked with that. But I went down. I was there for opening, and but I left right after that. That was my swan song and last official big assignment with the park. So. And it's gone today.
Oh yeah,
There's no Australia's land.
Yeah, it was demolished in 2004.
Right.
Now
the land was worth more than the
park was.
Yeah.
Well, did you experience what some people call the Beast Australian cousin, the Bush Beast, that opened with the park in 1986?
I did not get back down for that one.
For the Bush Beast?
Yeah, I did not get to that one. I'll tell you one of the funny things. Australia, the one thing that Australia was lacking was infrastructure, roads.
Right.
And we built that park west of Sydney out in an area called Penrith, the Blue Mountains, towards the Blue Mountains. It was just hard as hell to get there. It was like a 45-minute hour drive outside of Sydney, which was only like 20-some miles away.
Right.
To get there. And it was in the wrong place, frankly. We bought a where you grow wine and vines. Vineyard. Thank you. It was a vineyard, and we bought that. And we were told don't build it out that way, but we did. And at that time, that was the end of the world. In Australia and Sydney, wasn't anything out that way. People didn't go that way. It didn't have a good cachet from the standpoint of reputation and everything in that area either. It was kind of just not good quality out that way.
Right.
So that all contributed to its demise. But later on, when the park closed in 2004, that land became so valuable because Sydney was spreading out
right.
and going that way. It was worth more than it was to operate a theme park. So they bulldozed it. And it became condominiums and commercial property.
So now, correct me if I'm wrong. This about the same year that Australia's Wonderland opened. You actually started the company known as International Theme Park Services, or ITPS for short.
Yeah. Well, actually, I opened ITPS in '83.
Okay.
When I left Taft, and we, as a matter of fact, you can see that over there on my wall. You might want to shoot a picture of that. My first project was Wonder World in England, outside of England. Actually, that was in the news this last week about they're building a park in the area where we were planning that park 44 years ago, up in Milton Keynes. And if you go online and put in Milton Keynes, citizen, you can see the story. They called me and I gave them the information on it. So that was my stepping stone. And the group had come to Taft Broadcasting Company for assistance, for consultation and investment, and wanted to see if Taft would help them. Well, and I met with them most of the time, and they eventually came to me, quite frankly, and said, look, we'd rather work with you. It's a nice company and everything, but we'd like to see you come with us and be the head of this and set it up and take it through. And I said, well, I've been thinking about leaving. This would be a good stepping stone. I want to set up my own company. So I left Taft then and started working with Ian Quick, Jerry Baptist, and a very famous architect who built Milton Keynes, Derek Walker, and their team. And it was just too early. They had a great concept. It was a children's concept, kind of like an early SpongeBob kind of characters and things. Really fun. But they just couldn't get financing because nothing had been done like that over in England, and Europe wasn't that progressive yet. So I worked with them while I was forming ITPS, and my business was starting to grow and grow and grow. I was working with Togo, the ride manufacturer now. I was working with Intamin and helping them on things. I was working with Lotte World over in Korea, and all these other projects were starting to develop. And I finally said to Jerry and Ian, look, I'm going to help you. When I needed a stepping stone, you were there, and now you're going to need assistance. And I said, I'm not going to charge you anything anymore because you've taken, and been good to me. So for the next 3 or 4 years, I worked with them. ITPS did, and we didn't even charge them a penny. And but they couldn't get the financing. We went to in London. There's the financial community like Wall Street. It's called the City.
Yeah.
And we went in to every bank in the city, made presentations, and we get right to the threshold, and then something would happen. So they never really were able to build that park, but it was my stepping stone and launching pad for ITPS. And as the story is, we've worked on over 500 projects in 55 countries, and just signed a contract in Saudi Arabia last week. So
now, may I ask for that wasn't part of the questions, but you mentioned is that project by any chance related to Six Flags Quidia opening in Saudi Arabia?
No, as you probably know, Saudi Arabia is building 6-7 theme parks, 21 family entertainment centers. They're spending $13 billion on 300 square miles. It's just crazy what they're doing. It's off the hook, and they're doing too much at once. They really need to. They're trying to build Orlando in 3 years, which has taken Orlando 55 years to build. So because they know they're out of oil, and they know they want to create tourism. So Six Flags Kitty is another project. We'll see how well that does. But it's the market right now. All the manufacturers and suppliers are all working on in Saudi Arabia in our industry.
Do you have any special project of yours that are your favorites from your time at ITPS or?
Well, certainly Lotte World is one. I mean, the chairman of Lotte World at that time, Kyoko Shen was his name. He was the one of the top 5 richest men in the world. He came to me. He came to Rich Battaglia out in California and Intamin, and we formed a company that helped him plan, design, develop, buy, and operate that park in Seoul, Korea, which draws somewhere between 7 and 10 million people a year, and it has since 1988, I believe, it opened. So that's certainly one of my favorite. But we've worked on so many projects and had so much fun with different concepts and ideas. As long as somebody has an idea, we have a business. So they keep coming to us.
I have one more question and then a few parting words. At your time from either Kings Island, Coney Island, in this area, were there any, besides the Brady Bunch and Partridge Family, were there any local celebrities that showed up for events at either parks? Like, for example, the Cool Ghoul that used to be on the local Fox channel here, or if I remember right, the kids show Uncle Al.
We had all the local. I'll take you through park by park. Coney Island, everybody locally on television came there. So we had Uncle Al, who was really one of the biggest and first kiddie shows. Al Lewis and Wanda Lewis, and that show ran for decades. The Cool Ghoul, he was kind of the forerunner to the guy in Chicago.
Svengoolie,
yeah. who does the only Google always went when he talked, and he was very funny. He had the eyes and all the makeup, long hair. Bob Shreve, Skipper Ryle, Ruth Lyons. These are all local people. Dottie Mack, Paul Dixon, who David Letterman copied himself after in many ways. They all came to Coney Island. And we would get celebrities. Kings Island, as you pointed out, the Partridge Family, what's the other one?
Brady Bunch.
Brady's. Those types would come in. And we would get people passing through Cincinnati, want to see the park come through. So we'd get celebrities all the time there. At King's Dominion, I was close to Washington, D.C., and so we got a lot of White House people and politicians. One of the great stories, Andy and John, is I got a call from the White House one day, and they said Nelson Rockefeller's wife, Happy Rockefeller, would like to bring the kids down and enjoy the park. I said, absolutely, come on down. So my wife Donna and I, we hosted her. And I'll never forget this little airport in Hanover County, just a couple of miles away from the park. Air Force Two comes in. It's the biggest planes ever landed in there. People didn't know what it was. They thought it was a spaceship coming in and landing at the Hanover County Airport. And she came in. I tell a funny story. The Rockefellers had a lot of money and access. And the boys were young, 10, 12. And I said, what do you guys want to do? Want to go? Because young guys, what do they like to do in the park? Drive the turnpikes, right? I said, you want to go down and drive the turnpike? They went, now we have our own cars. They were about 10 or 12 years old at that time. But we would get John Warner, Senator Warner, who appointed me to the Senate subcommittee on tourism for the United States Senate. Elizabeth Taylor was coming down one time. Oh my gosh! And a lot of politicians would come down from D.C. It was only 90 minutes away, so it was a great place to. It was their Disneyland, if you will. So they came in. So there were always people coming through, and of course with Rollercoaster, that's when we had our plethora of movie stars on site. And that was a lot of fun. So good times.
Well, my last question for you would be: in the past 50 plus years that you've been in the amusement park industry business, did you think that you'd be getting be this far into it, like this far up into the amusement park industry?
Hell, I didn't think I'd be alive. Number one. Number two, no, I mean, one of the great experiences I had, and I'm sure you know this, was I was president of IAPA.
Right.
And that was in 1989 to 90. And I went through the chairs. We had third, second, first, and then you were president back then as chairman now. And that was a great experience, and I really helped shape the industry from the standpoint of bringing in the international membership, because back then in the 80s, it was the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions in name, but it was really an American association. There weren't that many international people. There were a few, Jeffrey Thompson, and a few Boo Kentorp from Sweden, Liseberg, few people like that were involved with our board, but not very many.
Right.
And there was a very xenophobic attitude towards the international. And I said, if we're going to be an international association, let's open it up. So we started bringing in more people from international, and of course today, roughly 50% of the attendance is international in the membership. And we have IAPA shows, Middle East, Europe, South America, Asia.
And the big one in Orlando.
In Orlando, still the granddaddy. But I'll tell you what, I think that's going to change someday, with all of these other shows that have developed around the world now, do you really need to fly from Dubai to Orlando if you have a great show there? And these shows are getting tens of thousands of people now, so it saves a lot of money, hotels and airfares and things like that. So it's really become it's a global association now, for sure. So and one of the things I'm probably the most proud of is set up the Cornell Institute education program, and I wrote the syllabus and the glossary for our industry to help young people who wanted to learn about our industry but had no specific university or college to go to.
Right.
You want to be a doctor? Go to UC. You want to be a lawyer? Go to UCLA. You want to be a theme park person? So what was Cornell known for? Hospitality. So I went up there and met with a gentleman named Bill Chernish, who was an assistant dean, and we set up this program. And for years, that program grew and nurtured, and there's still some form of it going on up at Bowling Green now, but it all grew out of the Cornell Institute program back then, and that's one of my proudest achievements with IAPA.
Well, for our viewers, if they want to try and get a hold of you or your company, can you tell us more, like how they get more information on ITPS or yourself?
Yeah, we do, Andy, John, we do a publication daily. We have for 26 years. It's the best publication in the industry. It comes out daily. It's called the ITPS Daily News. All the fun that's fit to print, we say. And we do stories on amusement parks, theme parks, water parks, family entertainment centers, museums, location-based entertainments, zoos and attractions, aquariums, as I say. So we've done it all these years, and it's free. It's free. There's nothing free today, all right? And it's read by over 5,000 people a day, every day, in the morning, including me. That's what you go online, and I find out what's going on. Sean Haas is the head of that in our company here. And if you contact Sean Haas, SHWANHAAS, at INTER themepark.com, and tell him you want to receive that, we'll put you on that list and you'll get it daily. It'll come to you automatically. So if you like theme parks and you want to know what's going on and you want to be current, this is the one. The rest of them are days late and weeks late with information, but we're current, and we really have this great gathering of information daily. So, and then International Theme Park Services is www.themepark.com, and you go in there, you can check our website out and see our background books and projects and things we've worked on for these years. So.
Okay, well, I appreciate you for being on the video podcast, Just the Facts, Mr. Speigel. I really do.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm glad you guys came down. If you ever need anything, please let me know. And it's nice to see young guys like you and John who are interested in the industry and who help promote it and keep stuff out there in front of people.
Oh, not a problem, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.